All right.
Today is November 27th. We've had a wonderful Turkey Day. We had also a 70th anniversary on Tuesday, November the 24th. That's quite a feat this day and time to live 70 years with one ornery old fella. So, but I'll recap a little bit. We moved to Richardson in '66, mainly to, Ben was going to be in partners with a couple of men that took over the jewelry department in 5 Gibson stores. And after about 2 years of unsuccessful, I would say, or they didn't do such a good job of running them, he decided to quit and go to work for himself. And about that time, I had been helping in the Gibson stores. They needed somebody that knew just a little bit about jewelry. So I worked about 6 months over in South Dallas just to get a store in order. And then in Denison in 1960, I had got my real estate license so I could be home when my children came home from school. So then in '61, I went ahead and got my broker's license. So when I moved down here, I had planned to start in the real estate business immediately, but I got sidetracked by the jewelry store, so I didn't start until, I guess, late 1967. And I worked for a couple of years, or a year and a half, I guess, with one lady that just had a single office. Well, this didn't work out too well, so her name was Ruth Young. So Ebby Halliday Realtors was one of the bigger realtors in town, and I had a close friend that worked for her, and she said, come over and work with us. So this is what I did. In 1968, I went to work for Ebby Halliday Realtors, and I had a lot of experiences in real estate. Just about, as every realtor knows, just about every deal was different. And I'll tell you one or two. I was working with a client, and they needed pretty close to a bus route downtown. And at that time, Ebby had a practice of 5 people in the office had to have seen the house before we could put a sign in the yard. So if we got a phone call and they said, well, how about this house over on Darnell or whatever, somebody would be knowledgeable about it. And then every Tuesday we went in a caravan and saw the new listings that we had at that time. So I had been showing this, they wanted a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, just a couple. And I had showed them this house, and I told him, I said, you know, he said, you going to put a sign in my yard today? And I said, no, I can't put a sign in your yard today. I've got to get 5 people out here to look at it. So one of the girls in the office had a client, and she made an appointment like at 8:30 the next morning. Well, I made one at 9:30 to show my people. Well, while her people were looking at other houses, I showed my people the house, and his wife, he said, well, let's go home and think about it. She said, no, we're not going to go home and think about it. We've lost 2 houses because you wanted to think about it. This is just perfect for us. So anyway, the long and short of it was, we went to, they only came $500 under the asking price, and I took it to the gentleman that owned the house, and he accepted the deal as it was. And so then I put a sold sign in the yard, and he said, I didn't think you could put a sign in the yard. And I said, oh, you can put a sold sign anytime. But the reason I'm telling you this is this only took about 2 days to sell this house, which was not the norm. It was an exception to the rule. He had moved to Washington, D.C., and I had out of the blue, about 3 months later, I had a man call me, and he said, Nora Barnes, and I said, yes, sir. He said, I hear you're the best real estate salesman in Texas. I said, well, somebody's been lying to you, because that's not true. He said, well, Mr. So-and-so said you sold his house in a couple of days, and he said, I have a house in a good part of town, and there's nothing happened to it. I said, well, where is it? And he told me it's over on Parkview. So I said, well, that is a good part of town. Why isn't it sold? The reason I'm telling you this is just to let you know a little bit of what realtors go through. So I went over to see the house. Well, the weeds were knee-high. I went in the house, and it smelled so badly that I couldn't stay in it. So I got the lady next door. She had a key to come and some people had used the commodes and hadn't flushed them because there was no water on. The realtor that had it didn't leave the water on, which was a huge mistake because we always left water on when we listed a house. Anyway, she came over and we flushed the commodes out and aired the house out. So I called him and I said, well, I know why your house didn't sell, and I explained the condition to him, and he said, I can't believe that realtor let that house go like that. He said, I said, well, does she still have the listing? He said, no, her listing expired several weeks ago. I said, well, you have her to get her sign out. He said, you just go over there and knock it down. So I had the neighbor next door just to take it down. And anyway, we got the yard fixed, we got the house cleaned up, and it did sell pretty soon. So that was just one of the stories that I had. And also I had another experience about, I was sitting on an open house one day, and it was in a very good house. In fact, it was one that I could kick myself for not buying myself. And it was in a nice location, had a lovely pool. And I sat on the house, and some people came by and they wrote a contract on it. And he, about 3 days later, the man came in and he said, Nora, he said, I can't buy that house. And I said, what do you mean you can't buy that house? You already have. Well, he'd been with Mobile for about 35 years, and he was such a good customer, not a good customer, but his credit was so good that he had gone ahead and applied, and because he was so good, my homeowner had gone out and purchased another house and put a down payment on it. So he said, well, my daughter is moving up here from Houston. She has a little boy. She's gone through a horrendous divorce, and she just won't move in the house with a pool. And I said, now, sir, you know that pool was there when you bought the house. He said, yes, I did. And he said, I'm willing to lose my down payment on it. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll get the homeowner and you together, and y'all can work it out. So this is what I did. So the homeowner said, well, I'll just have to let Nora sell it again. And I thought, oh my, maybe we'll have that, because he had already put some money down on another house. Anyway, the long and short of it was, this went on Friday or Saturday. Well, on Sunday I held open house, and you wouldn't believe my incredible luck, because I had another couple that came in and wanted to buy that house. And I said, well, you go home and think about it, and then we'll see. And they said, well, you come to our house and see what you could list it for. Well, when I went to their house, I understood why they wanted that house. He had made so much money. His CPA said, you have to move up and buy a bigger house. Well, their house had the same colors exactly that this house had in it. And anyway, I ended up writing a contract on my own listing again. And when that closed, I had 3 listings that I had sold myself, all closed in the same month, which is not an everyday feat. But I worked for Ebby. That's enough of my stories. I stayed with Ebby. I do want to mention one thing. Mary Frances Burleson was my first manager. I don't believe there's a person in the United States that's a better manager than she was, because she never made you feel, if you had a turn of bad luck, that you were a bad realtor. She just would build you up instead of making, noises that you need to do better, and if you didn't, blah, blah, blah. So I guess I stayed with Ebby Halliday, and we moved three different times while I was with her. But I started in '68, and in '95, my sister Elsie had a car wreck, and from then on she went downhill, and she lived in Oklahoma City. So she decided she wanted to move down closer to where I was, so she moved into a retirement home here. Well, from that time on, I worked in real estate, but I wasn't as active full-time because I had to spend quite a bit of time with her. Well, she passed away in '97, and just about that time, my mother had lived in Oklahoma City also, and when she was 101, her sight got so bad that we had to move her out of her apartment. Well, I had 2 brothers at the time living in Oklahoma City, but one of them lived by himself, so he couldn't very well take care of Mother. And the other one's wife worked, and he couldn't take care of her, so Mother ended up coming down and staying with me. Well, she didn't like Texas. She was an Oklahoma person, bred and born, and she wanted to go back to Oklahoma. I said, Mama, I said, you know, you got two choices. You can stay in Texas with me and here as long as you live, or you can go to Oklahoma and be put in a nursing home. She said, well, you get Martin on the line. I said, okay. So I got Martin on the line. She said, Martin, I want to come live with you. Can I come live with you? And he said, no, Mama, you can't come live with me. I have to work. And she said, well, Nita can take care of me. And she said, Nita works 2 or 3 days a week. And he said, you don't want to pay somebody to come in and take care of you all day long. She said, I can take care of myself, which was not so, but she thought so. Anyway, when she hung up, she finally says, well, I guess I'm glad I've got a daughter living in Texas so I don't have to go in a nursing home. So that she stayed with me, I guess, well, she moved in 97 and it wasn't quite 2 years. Anyway, she passed away August 11th in 1999. And about this time, in January, before she passed away, I started having trouble with my eyes. Actually, I started having trouble a long time ago. About in '85, I developed glaucoma. So I need all my children and grandchildren to have their eyes checked once a year, because I don't know where and why I developed glaucoma. No one else in my family had it, except after I developed it, my younger brother, Charles, has glaucoma also.